Respect is rarely demanded. It is detected. Before a word lands, the room has already decided how much weight you carry. Not because of volume, not confidence theater, but because of restraint. Most people try to earn respect by explaining more. They soften sentences. They decorate discomfort. They negotiate their own boundaries before anyone asks. And the strange part is this: the more they speak, the less authority remains in the room. This script is not about domination. It's not about clever comebacks or verbal sparring. It steps about phrases that end uncertainty, sentences that close loops, words that create psychological gravity, language that signals self-trust without asking for approval. These phrases work because they do something rare. They remove urgency. They remove defensiveness. They remove the need to be liked. Each phrase in this list carries a quiet message underneath it. I know where I stand. And when someone knows where they stand, others adjust automatically. You will notice something as we move through these phrases. They are simple, almost boring. That's intentional. Powerful language doesn't sparkle. It settles. This is language used by people who do not rush, do not chase, and do not explain themselves into smaller shapes. 25 phrases, each one a boundary, each one a pause, each one a signal that says, this is the line, decide accordingly. Let's begin. You notice it immediately when someone says this. Even before fully registering the words, there's a subtle gravity, like the room slightly slows down to adjust to the presence of certainty. The sentence doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to. It simply exists, and everyone else's attention folds around it, whether they want to or not. In a meeting, in a disagreement, in a situation that feels messy, this phrase slices through ambiguity, like a sharpened line drawn in the sand. It tells people that what follows is important, and that you are the one who decides what is important. The elegance lies in its simplicity. There is no aggression, no arrogance. It's a clean declaration that orients everyone around your perspective without demanding compliance. Most people, when confronted with uncertainty or conflict, respond with filler words. They hedge, they explain, they apologize preemptively, as though respect were something that could be begged for. They offer context that dilutes their authority. By contrast, this phrase immediately asserts a boundary of relevance. It signals that you are observing the situation, assessing the priorities, and that your awareness is already anchored to what truly matters. The listener doesn't feel attacked. They feel a subtle pressure to align, because clarity has a way of compelling respect without theatrics. It operates on a different plane than volume or insistence. Authority often hides in quiet precision, rather than in loud certainty. The psychological mechanism behind it is simple yet profound. Humans respond unconsciously to signals that indicate competence and self-trust. When you say this phrase, you are implicitly communicating that you are neither distracted nor reactive. Your mind has already evaluated the landscape, identified the critical factors, and positioned you as someone who does not waste energy on the irrelevant. That implicit message triggers an automatic recalibration in others. They start listening more closely, thinking more carefully, and measuring their responses with greater consideration. It's not fear, it's acknowledgement. It's recognition that you operate from a framework where clarity is non-negotiable, and that in that framework you cannot be easily swayed. Delivering this phrase requires nothing more than calm confidence, and a measured pause afterward. Speak it with a tone that is steady, neither confrontational nor hesitant. Let the silence that follows do part of the work. The human mind fills pauses with significance. So by stopping after this phrase, you let the weight of the words settle into the room. Notice how people adjust. Some will probe for more, testing the boundary. Others will align immediately, relieved to have a framework to follow. Either response confirms the authority embedded in the phrase, because it operates above debate and below hostility. Using this phrase repeatedly is not about manipulation. It's about establishing a standard of clarity and relevance in your interactions. People will notice the pattern without being able to articulate why. Over time, your presence begins to carry an unspoken rule. Discussions around you are structured, anchored, and purposeful. You are no longer negotiating every detail, clarifying every misunderstanding, or apologizing for being precise. You are simply present, and the weight of the phrase ensures that presence is respected. The authority you establish this way is durable because it comes from internal consistency rather than external showmanship. When you say, "Let's be clear about what matters here," you are silently drawing attention to the essential, dismissing distractions without seeming dismissive, and asserting control over the narrative without aggression. Others can choose to follow, question, or even resist, but they cannot ignore it. This phrase marks the first line of clarity, the initial anchor of respect, and the foundation for every boundary that follows. It is a simple sentence with enduring impact, a quiet command that signals you are present, composed, and fully in control of what truly matters. When you say, "That doesn't work for me," it carries an invisible weight. It doesn't yell, it doesn't justify, it doesn't soften, it simply establishes a boundary. In conversation, in negotiation, in any situation where your autonomy is being tested, or your time is being stretched, this phrase is a clean, unarguable statement. It signals to the other person that your limits are fixed, that your agency is intact, and that their assumptions about your willingness to comply are incorrect. The elegance of this phrase lies in its brevity. No explanation, no defense, no apology. It communicates the message directly. Your proposal, expectation, or demand is unacceptable, and you are the one drawing the line. Most people fail to assert themselves effectively because they attach justification to every refusal. They preface their boundaries with "I think maybe," or "I feel like," attempting to soften impact or avoid confrontation. They worry about perception and overcompensate, turning a simple refusal into a convoluted negotiation. "That doesn't work for me" bypasses all of that. It is an acknowledgement of reality from your perspective. It frames your position clearly and without ambiguity. You are not debating, bargaining, or begging for acceptance. You are simply stating your terms. The listener may resist, but they cannot mistake your clarity for uncertainty. The authority embedded in the phrase is psychological, not performative. It works because it is grounded in self-respect rather than aggression. Psychologically, humans respond to clear boundaries instinctively. When someone articulates what is not acceptable, it reduces ambiguity and creates a framework for interaction. Our minds unconsciously align with clarity. By delivering this phrase without hesitation, you are signaling that your choices are deliberate and informed. There is no need for justification, because the refusal itself conveys competence, self-awareness, and confidence. Others sense that challenging the boundary is not an invitation to debate your worth, it is a challenge to the structure you have already established. And in that recognition, respect is generated silently, almost automatically. The delivery is as important as the phrase itself. Say it calmly, with steady tone, and resist the urge to over-explain. Afterward, maintain a brief pause. Let the words breathe. This allows the listener to process the boundary without defensive noise. Some may test, some may inquire, but the presence of your unshakable limit leaves little room for argument. Over time, using this phrase consistently cultivates an unspoken understanding in your interactions. You know your limits, and others adjust accordingly. Authority grows quietly but firmly. Repeatedly applying "that doesn't work for me" establishes a rhythm of respect. It teaches people that your decisions are deliberate, that your personal and professional standards are non-negotiable, and that your autonomy is not subject to persuasion. You are not aggressive, just immovable. The power of the phrase lies in its simplicity. It draws boundaries without drama, asserts authority without loudness, and communicates self-trust without ego. It becomes an internal compass for how others perceive your presence, anchoring respect in your everyday interactions. When you say, "I'll take responsibility for this," the energy in the room shifts immediately. There's no finger-pointing, no hedging, no attempt to distribute blame or manage optics. The sentence lands as a statement of ownership, calm yet firm, and everyone unconsciously registers it. People notice that you are willing to stand at the center of accountability, to be the one whose decisions, actions, or consequences are acknowledged. That willingness signals maturity, trustworthiness, and quiet authority. Unlike phrases that demand attention or compliance, this one earns it without fanfare. It draws respect because it demonstrates that you do not avoid outcomes, that you are aware of your impact, and that you are capable of holding space for responsibility without defensiveness or drama. Most people evade responsibility. They hedge with, "It wasn't entirely my fault," or "I tried." But circumstances, they dilute ownership with justification and explanation. While this may protect them from short-term conflict, it erodes respect. True authority emerges when someone can calmly and confidently step forward and say, "I am accountable." The psychological effect is immediate. Others feel secure because they know there is clarity, there is ownership, and there is someone who can be trusted to handle the situation. Authority does not reside in control or dominance alone. It resides in the willingness to hold responsibility and face consequences directly. Delivering this phrase is deceptively simple. Speak it steadily, with no defensiveness, and no over-explaining. The confidence in your tone is what transforms a simple acknowledgement into a command of respect. Follow it with a pause that allows your statement to settle. Silence reinforces ownership, giving the listener space to process the implicit message. You are capable, composed, and reliable. There is a subtle gravity to someone who owns their decisions, and the room naturally aligns itself to that presence. Over time, repeatedly taking responsibility in this way shifts your interactions fundamentally. People begin to trust your word without hesitation. They recognize that when you say something, it carries weight. Your commitments are not empty. Your statements are grounded in action, and respect grows quietly, organically, because it is built on observable reliability rather than demand. Saying, "I'll take responsibility for this," also changes your internal state. You are no longer deflecting, defending, or negotiating. You are present, aware, and anchored in the reality of your choices. That inner stability radiates outward, creating a cycle of respect that is self-sustaining. This phrase works in every context, professional, personal, or casual. Its simplicity is deceptive. It demonstrates courage without boasting, leadership without overt domination, and self-trust without arrogance. It signals that you are someone who can be counted on, someone whose presence stabilizes rather than destabilizes, and someone whose authority is rooted in consistent, observable behavior. Respect does not need to be demanded when it is quietly earned through responsibility. When you say, "We're not aligned on that," it immediately signals a pause in the conversation, a recalibration of expectations. There is no aggression, no judgment, just a clear acknowledgement that perspectives differ. The phrase creates a boundary without hostility, drawing attention to the fact that while others may have opinions or plans, your stance is deliberate and considered. It communicates awareness and discernment, and the room instinctively registers that your alignment is intentional, not accidental. In situations of negotiation, teamwork, or debate, this phrase establishes your authority subtly but firmly. It does not escalate tension. It clarifies reality. Most people stumble when disagreement arises, because they either acquiesce too quickly or confront too aggressively. They fear that disagreement will lead to conflict or rejection, so they either mask their opinion or over-explain their position. Both approaches weaken respect. By contrast, saying, "We're not aligned on that," is concise, calm, and precise. It does not invite argument, but it does not avoid it either. It creates space for mutual recognition of difference, signaling that your boundaries and opinions are grounded, stable, and not dependent on the approval of others. Authority, in this sense, is not about dominating the discussion, but maintaining clarity of position. Psychologically, this phrase works because humans are drawn to certainty and clarity. Ambiguity creates anxiety. Clear statements reduce it. By articulating misalignment without emotional charge, you shift the conversation from chaos to structure. People understand where they stand in relation to you, and the social hierarchy subtly adjusts. Respect emerges naturally, because the statement is not about ego or power. It is about the conscious articulation of your boundaries and convictions. Others may push back, inquire, or seek compromise, but they do so within a framework you have silently established. Delivering this phrase effectively requires a steady, neutral tone. Avoid raising your voice or adding qualifiers that dilute the message. Let a brief pause follow the statement, allowing the gravity of clarity to settle. Silence reinforces authority because it gives weight to the words themselves rather than embellishing them with emotion. Over time, consistently using this phrase cultivates an aura of reliability. People come to understand that your opinions are deliberate, your alignment's intentional, and your response is measured. You are not swayed easily, and that perception fosters respect organically. Repeatedly applying, "We're not aligned on that," also strengthens your internal sense of self-trust. By verbalizing boundaries calmly, you reinforce your own understanding of priorities and values. You communicate to others and remind yourself that your attention is directed, your judgment is sound, and your presence is anchored in intention. This phrase works in meetings, negotiations, personal discussions, or any context where clarity and mutual recognition are needed. It commands respect not by confrontation, but by the quiet, unmistakable authority of someone who knows where they stand and does not need to compromise clarity for approval. When you say, "I need a moment to think before answering," the room experiences a subtle shift. It's almost imperceptible at first, but the pause you create commands attention. Unlike reactive statements or impulsive responses, this phrase signals deliberation, self-control, and measured authority. It communicates to others that your mind is not hurried, that your decisions are intentional, and that you do not simply echo what others expect to hear. In any conversation where pressure, complexity, or social expectation exists, this simple statement establishes an unspoken standard. Your thoughts are considered, not rushed, and your input carries weight because it is chosen consciously. Most people respond to challenging questions or high-stakes conversations immediately, often fearing silence or interpreting it as weakness. They blur the line between reaction and reflection, speaking before understanding, hoping that speed will convey competence. But rapid, unmeasured responses rarely command respect. They reveal vulnerability, impulsiveness, or a lack of confidence. By explicitly asking for a moment, you are claiming authority over the pace of the interaction. You are letting others know that your response is not reactive but intentional, and that your judgment is worth waiting for. The authority is silent yet palpable, emerging from patience rather than volume. Psychologically, this phrase works because humans unconsciously respect deliberate thought. Decision-making is more persuasive when it is clearly reflective, when it signals awareness of consequences, and when it demonstrates an ability to consider multiple dimensions before acting. By verbalizing the need for a moment, you project self-control and insight. Others notice that you are comfortable with silence, that you are not dependent on immediate approval, and that your words will carry precision when spoken. In turn, respect grows because the listener perceives a mind that is disciplined, intentional, and discerning. Delivery is critical. Speak the phrase steadily and calmly, without a hint of panic or apology. Avoid adding, "I'm sorry," or "I don't know yet," because that undermines the authority of the statement. Simply say it, pause, and allow the space to exist. Let the silence itself reinforce your command over the interaction. Some may fidget, push for an answer, or test your patience. That is natural. The strength of this phrase lies in your ability to maintain composure, demonstrating that your attention and cognition are under your control, not dictated by the urgency of others. Over time, consistently using this phrase shifts your interactions profoundly. Colleagues, friends, or family members begin to expect reflection, not reaction. Your voice gains gravity because it is always preceded by thought. The power lies not in the phrase itself, but in the pattern. It establishes that you operate from a place of calm assessment, not impulsive response. The authority you build is subtle, internal, and self-sustaining, recognized not because it is demanded, but because it is consistently demonstrated. "I need a moment to think before answering" becomes more than a sentence. It becomes a signature of presence. It signals respect for yourself and implicitly teaches others to respect the thought process. It communicates patience, discipline, and deliberate engagement, qualities that silently elevate your status in any social or professional environment. Through this simple statement, you establish that your words are valuable, your decisions considered, and your authority quiet but undeniable. When you say, "That's not an accurate assumption," it immediately shifts the energy of a conversation. The statement is firm, precise, and devoid of emotion, yet it carries an invisible authority. It signals that you are attentive, discerning, and unwilling to allow misunderstandings to shape interactions. Unlike reactive corrections that can escalate tension, or passive acquiescence that erodes respect, this phrase operates in a zone of controlled assertiveness. It addresses misconceptions without insult, clarifies reality without debate, and asserts your understanding without demanding agreement. The phrase does not attack, it simply corrects, and the act of correction itself communicates competence and mental clarity. Most people fail in situations of misunderstanding because they either ignore the inaccuracy or respond defensively. Some hedge their words with phrases like, "I think," or "maybe," diluting their authority and signaling uncertainty. Others over-explain, providing context and justification that inadvertently undermines the core point. "That's not an accurate assumption" avoids these traps entirely. It is succinct, confident, and anchored in self-trust. By removing unnecessary qualifiers, you assert not just the factual correction, but your presence as someone whose perspective carries weight. Respect emerges naturally when people recognize that you are neither reactive nor manipulative, but composed and precise. The psychological power of this phrase is subtle but profound. Humans respond unconsciously to signals that communicate competence and clarity. When a statement like this is delivered calmly, it creates cognitive recalibration in the listener. They realize that what they presumed may not hold, and simultaneously, they recognize that you are someone capable of evaluating situations accurately. The authority is neither loud nor aggressive. It is embedded in the certainty with which you present your perspective. Others instinctively defer, reconsider, or align, because uncertainty is naturally uncomfortable, and clarity is compelling. Delivery matters. Speak the phrase with a steady, even tone. Avoid raising your voice or adding defensive qualifiers. Let a brief pause follow the statement, allowing it to settle. Silence reinforces authority by letting the words carry weight without embellishment. In practice, you may encounter resistance, questions, challenges, or even attempts to reassert the original assumption. That is normal. Maintaining composure in response solidifies the phrase's power. Authority is confirmed not in confrontation, but in the measured, confident handling of disagreement. Repeatedly applying, "That's not an accurate assumption" over time, establishes a pattern of respect. People begin to understand that your assessments are reliable and grounded, that you notice details others overlook, and that your judgment is precise. The phrase works in professional, social, or personal contexts because it communicates clarity without aggression, correction without arrogance, and authority without conflict. By consistently asserting accuracy calmly and confidently, you create a presence that is difficult to dismiss, impossible to ignore, and inherently respected. When you say, "I hear you. Here's my position," it instantly shifts the dynamic of any conversation. The first part, "I hear you," signals acknowledgement and respect for the other person's perspective. It is disarming because it communicates attention without conceding agreement. The listener feels recognized, their viewpoint validated, yet it sets the stage for your own clarity. The second part, "Here's my position," asserts your authority calmly and deliberately. Together, the phrase creates balance, empathy without compromise, acknowledgement without subordination, and presence without defensiveness. The combination carries weight because it demonstrates that you can listen and lead simultaneously, a rare skill that commands respect instinctively. Most people fail in dialogue because they either over-apologize while expressing their views or dismiss the other person outright. They are trapped between defensiveness and submission, rarely finding a tone that conveys both awareness and authority. This phrase eliminates that trap. It acknowledges the other perspective first, which reduces resistance, then introduces your stance, which positions you as someone capable of thoughtful engagement. Authority emerges not from force but from the deliberate sequencing of acknowledgement followed by assertion. It signals that your opinions are considered, not reactive, and that you operate from a framework of reason and composure. Psychologically, this phrase works because humans respond to both recognition and clarity. Being heard activates subtle trust mechanisms in the brain. We are naturally more receptive to ideas from people who first demonstrate that they notice us. At the same time, clear communication of your own stance establishes boundaries and certainty. When you combine the two, you create a conversational gravity that naturally draws respect. People may challenge your position, but the acknowledgement embedded in your words reduces defensiveness and opens space for genuine dialogue. You are not demanding agreement, you are asserting presence. Delivery is key. Speak "I hear you" with calm, genuine tone, ensuring the listener senses that their perspective has been noted. Pause briefly, allowing this acknowledgement to resonate, then continue with "Here's my position," delivered steadily and without over-explanation. The pause between the two parts is crucial. It gives the first acknowledgement time to settle before introducing your stance. In practice, this sequence prevents escalation, reduces tension, and ensures that your authority is recognized without overt confrontation. It signals confidence and mental control while fostering a sense of mutual respect. Repeatedly using this phrase builds a subtle pattern of authority and credibility. People recognize that when you speak, it is both considered and deliberate. Your presence in conversations becomes stabilizing. Others adapt to your rhythm and communication style. This phrase works in negotiations, workplace discussions, or personal disagreements, because it demonstrates both emotional intelligence and decisiveness. By combining acknowledgement with assertion, you establish that you are someone who listens, evaluates, and responds with intentional authority. The phrase becomes a quiet command of respect, earned not through domination, but through composed, deliberate engagement that others unconsciously recognize and honor. When you say, "Let's stay focused on the outcome," the atmosphere immediately shifts. The phrase is neither commanding nor aggressive, yet it carries a subtle, undeniable authority. It directs attention to the result, not the distractions, disagreements, or tangents that often derail conversations. The words signal clarity of purpose, and the presence of someone who is anchored in priorities. People may continue to bring up side issues or emotional reactions, but the phrase acts like a lens, aligning energy toward what truly matters. It is not a demand. It is a quiet redirection that encourages cooperation while establishing your mental leadership in the interaction. Most people falter in conversations or meetings because they allow peripheral issues to dominate. They debate points that are irrelevant, justify minor mistakes, or get caught up in emotional undertones. By contrast, this phrase cuts through unnecessary complexity. It communicates that your attention is on what matters most, and that you will not be distracted by noise. Authority is reinforced because you are signaling that your decisions and responses are guided by outcomes, not by impulse or external pressures. It creates a sense of structure, demonstrating that your presence is focused, grounded, and purposeful. Psychologically, humans respond to clarity and direction. When someone anchors a conversation to outcomes, it reduces cognitive friction. People unconsciously align because focus provides predictability, which eases tension and decision-making. Saying, "Let's stay focused on the outcome," also signals that you value efficiency and purpose over argument or ego. Others recognize that you are not reactive to every provocation or digression, but that your mind operates with intention. The phrase communicates competence, calm authority, and an ability to manage complexity without overt control. Delivery matters. Speak the phrase with calm certainty, avoiding any hint of frustration or impatience. Allow a brief pause afterward. Let the statement settle. Silence after the phrase is powerful. It emphasizes the boundary without confrontation and lets the weight of your words guide the room. Some may challenge the refocusing, but the authority lies in your composure. The phrase becomes the anchor, and your consistent calm reinforces respect over time. Repeatedly applying, "Let's stay focused on the outcome," establishes a pattern of leadership and reliability. People begin to recognize that your interactions are structured, purposeful, and intentional. Your presence signals stability and direction, and respect grows organically as others understand that your guidance is both thoughtful and unflinching. The phrase works in professional, social, and personal contexts alike, because it demonstrates control without force, decisiveness without aggression, and authority grounded in clarity. Through its consistent use, you create a presence that naturally guides conversations, earns trust, and commands respect. When you say, "This conversation needs boundaries," the atmosphere immediately changes. It is neither accusatory nor emotional, yet it carries undeniable authority. The phrase communicates that the dialogue has exceeded limits, whether in tone, topic, or focus, and that you are establishing a framework for how it will continue. People unconsciously recognize that someone who can calmly enforce conversational boundaries commands respect. It signals awareness, self-control, and the ability to manage interactions without hostility. The words themselves are simple, but their effect is profound. They create structure, clarity, and psychological space for productive exchange. Most people fail to establish boundaries in discussions because they fear awkwardness or confrontation. They let conversations meander, allow disrespect, or become reactive, hoping that accommodating others will preserve harmony. The problem is that without clear boundaries, conversations often become chaotic, unproductive, or draining. This conversation needs boundaries addresses the issue directly. It signals that the discussion is not entirely open-ended, and that certain behaviors, assumptions, or directions are no longer acceptable. Authority emerges here not from dominance but from clarity. Others immediately understand that the terms of engagement are being set deliberately and calmly. Psychologically, humans respond to clear limits. When someone asserts boundaries, it reduces uncertainty and creates cognitive structure. People feel the implicit rule. Communication here will be orderly and respectful. The statement is neutral yet commanding. It is not about shutting down dialogue, but about channeling it in a way that allows meaningful exchange to occur. By asserting boundaries, you also demonstrate self-respect and composure. Others recognize that you are not reactive, not defensive, and not swayed by every provocation, which silently reinforces their respect and recalibrates the interaction in your favor. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase with steady, calm authority. Avoid raising your voice or adding qualifiers such as "I think" or "maybe," which weaken its power. Pause briefly after the statement, letting it settle in the room. The silence underscores the seriousness of the boundaries without aggression or judgment. Some may resist or test your limits, but maintaining composure is key. The authority comes from consistency and the understanding that the statement is final yet professional. It signals that you are neither rigid nor reactive. You are deliberate, thoughtful, and grounded. Repeated use of this conversation needs boundaries, transforms interactions over time. Colleagues, friends, or family members begin to recognize that your discussions operate within clear limits, creating predictability and respect. You establish a pattern of thoughtful engagement, where clarity and structure are expected and honored. The phrase works because it balances firmness with neutrality. It communicates self-trust without arrogance, authority without aggression, and control without conflict. Through consistent application, it earns respect quietly and naturally, setting a standard for all future interactions. When you say, "I won't accept being spoken to like that," the energy in the room shifts instantly. The statement is firm but not aggressive. It establishes a boundary without attacking the other person. It communicates that respect is not optional in your presence, and that the conversation will not proceed under conditions of disrespect. Unlike arguments or defensive responses, this phrase does not invite debate. It asserts a standard. The authority comes not from volume or anger, but from the quiet certainty that your dignity and composure are non-negotiable. People notice it instinctively, even if they cannot articulate why. Most individuals fail to enforce boundaries because they fear conflict or discomfort. They allow dismissive language, condescension, or passive-aggressive behavior to slide by, often rationalizing it to avoid tension. The result is erosion of respect over time, as others unconsciously register that boundaries are flexible and negotiable. By contrast, "I won't accept being spoken to like that" instantly sets a limit. It is concise, direct, and unshakable. It communicates that your self-respect is anchored internally and not subject to negotiation or manipulation. This is why authority is recognized. It is grounded in self-possession, not reactionary emotion. Psychologically, the phrase works because humans unconsciously calibrate respect based on boundaries. When someone clearly and calmly indicates that certain behavior is unacceptable, it triggers acknowledgement and reconsideration. People may resist initially, test limits, or attempt to justify themselves, but the clarity of your stance reduces the likelihood of repeated violations. The statement communicates not anger, but a disciplined commitment to your own standards. Others feel the need to adjust their behavior because your authority is implicit, arising from consistency rather than confrontation. The delivery is crucial. Speak the phrase steadily, without raising your voice or adding qualifiers like, "I'm sorry," or "but." These weaken authority. A calm tone, accompanied by brief silence, allows the weight of the words to settle. The pause signals that you are composed, in control, and unbothered by the need to over-explain. This quiet confidence amplifies the authority embedded in the phrase, creating a clear, non-negotiable boundary that others recognize and respect. Repeatedly using, "I won't accept being spoken to like that," reinforces your presence as someone whose boundaries are clear, consistent, and respected. It transforms interactions by setting a psychological framework where civility and composure are prerequisites for engagement. People begin to approach conversations with awareness and mindfulness, and respect becomes automatic rather than demanded. The power of the phrase lies in its simplicity and certainty. It does not provoke, it redirects. It does not intimidate, it commands recognition. Through consistent application, this phrase establishes you as someone who is calm, grounded, and unassailable in your authority, earning respect effortlessly in every sphere of interaction. When you say, "I stand by my decision," the room subtly shifts. There's no defensiveness, no need for excessive explanation, no invitation for debate. The phrase communicates certainty, conviction, and composure. It signals that you have assessed the situation, weighed the alternatives, and made a choice that you are fully prepared to uphold. In any context, professional, personal, or casual, this statement establishes authority because it demonstrates self-trust and unwavering clarity. People unconsciously recognize that a person who stands by their decisions commands attention, because certainty is rare and magnetic. Most people struggle to assert decisions consistently. They hedge, qualify, or apologize for their choices, often to avoid potential conflict or disapproval. This undermines authority because it communicates doubt or dependence on external validation. By contrast, "I stand by my decision" is concise and resolute. It does not need embellishment or justification. It communicates a psychological boundary. You are accountable for your choice, confident in your reasoning, and not easily swayed by external pressure. Authority emerges not through confrontation, but through the quiet strength of consistency and internal alignment. Psychologically, humans respond to confidence and consistency. Decisions backed by composure signal competence and reliability. When you declare that you stand by your decision, You are implicitly communicating that your reasoning is sound, your judgment is deliberate, and your presence is grounded in awareness. Others may wish to challenge you, but they also sense that your stance is anchored, and therefore worth respecting. The phrase commands attention, because it demonstrates that you operate from a stable internal framework rather than reactive impulses. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase steadily and calmly, with a tone of certainty but not arrogance. Avoid over-explaining or justifying. The words themselves are enough. A brief pause after the statement allows the weight of your conviction to settle. Silence reinforces authority, because it lets the listener process the finality and clarity of your position without distraction. Some may attempt to push back, but maintaining composure reinforces the credibility embedded in the phrase. Authority in this context is subtle, grounded in inner assurance rather than external pressure. Repeatedly using, "I stand by my decision," cultivates a pattern of respect and reliability over time. People recognize that your word is steady, your judgment's intentional, and your presence unshakable. You establish a reputation for clarity, decisiveness, and self-trust. The phrase works because it communicates firmness without aggression, confidence without arrogance, and authority without coercion. Over time, it becomes a signature of your presence, someone whose choices are deliberate, whose boundaries are respected, and whose authority is quietly, consistently recognized in every interaction. When you say, "That's not how I operate," the atmosphere in the room shifts immediately. The statement is calm, composed, and firm, yet it carries an unmistakable authority. It communicates that you have a clear framework for your actions, decisions, and principles, and that deviations from that framework are not acceptable. Unlike defensive justifications or reactive protests, this phrase sets a boundary effortlessly. It tells others that your behavior is intentional, consistent, and guided by internal rules rather than external pressure or whims. People recognize the presence of someone whose authority comes from self-alignment and clarity. Most individuals struggle to establish this kind of authority because they try to justify themselves or accommodate every expectation. They explain, rationalize, or over-apologize in an attempt to fit into someone else's framework. This weakens perception, as it signals uncertainty and malleability. By contrast, "That's not how I operate," is concise and unwavering. It communicates that you have standards, methods, and a personal code that guide your decisions. It is not confrontational, but it is unyielding, signaling both competence and self-trust. Authority emerges not through dominance, but through the demonstration of consistency and intentionality. Psychologically, humans respond unconsciously to patterns and predictability. When someone establishes a clear framework for their behavior, it reduces ambiguity and fosters respect. This phrase communicates that your choices are deliberate and grounded in principles rather than impulse. Others recognize that interacting with you requires awareness and consideration because you do not compromise your standards lightly. It subtly shifts the social dynamic. Respect is no longer optional. It is an acknowledgement of your clear boundaries and disciplined approach. Delivery is crucial. Speak the phrase steadily, with a calm tone that conveys certainty, without arrogance. Avoid adding qualifiers like "I guess," or "maybe," as these undermine the authority embedded in the words. Pause briefly afterward to allow the statement to settle. Silence reinforces the power of the phrase, allowing the listener to process the clarity and firmness without interruption. Some may resist or attempt to persuade, but maintaining composure affirms the statement's strength. The authority of this phrase lies in its quiet confidence, not in confrontation or loud assertion. Repeatedly applying, "That's not how I operate," cultivates an aura of respect and reliability over time. People begin to understand that your actions, decisions, and behaviors are guided by principles, not convenience or impulse. Your presence signals stability, intentionality, and self-possession. This phrase works in professional, personal, and casual contexts because it communicates inner alignment without hostility, firmness without aggression, and authority without coercion. Through consistent use, it becomes a subtle but powerful tool for commanding respect. A quiet reminder that your standards are deliberate, your choices grounded, and your authority derived from clarity, consistency, and self-trust. When you say, "We can disagree without disrespect," the energy in the room subtly shifts. The phrase communicates that conflict or difference of opinion is not threatening, yet it establishes a clear boundary regarding behavior. It signals that, while you are open to dialogue, the interaction must remain respectful, composed, and constructive. Unlike defensive statements or reactive comments, this phrase creates a framework for engagement that balances assertiveness with empathy. People recognize that you are someone who navigates disagreement with control and clarity, and this perception quietly commands respect. Most people mishandle disagreements because they either become reactive or defer excessively to avoid tension. They may raise their voice, argue defensively, or allow rudeness to go unchecked, undermining their presence and credibility. Others may suppress their viewpoint entirely, sacrificing self-expression for temporary harmony. By contrast, we can disagree without disrespect, establishes a standard of interaction while preserving authority and composure. It communicates that your boundaries are firm, your values are clear, and your participation is intentional. Authority emerges not through dominance, but through calm control and principled communication. Psychologically, humans respond to clarity and fairness. When a statement simultaneously acknowledges difference and sets respectful boundaries, it creates an implicit understanding. Interaction will be meaningful, not chaotic or degrading. The phrase signals that you are capable of managing conflict without compromising your integrity or composure. Others perceive that you are neither reactive nor passive, and this balance generates respect naturally. The authority comes from demonstrating that disagreement can coexist with civility, and that your presence enforces this standard quietly but consistently. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase with a calm, steady tone. Avoid adding apologies or qualifiers such as "I hope" or "maybe," as they weaken the authority inherent in the words. A brief pause after the statement allows it to resonate, giving others a moment to recalibrate their approach. Silence reinforces power, emphasizing that the boundary is both intentional and non-negotiable. Some may push against the limit, testing whether respect is truly required, but maintaining composure and consistency confirms the authority behind the phrase. The subtlety of the command is what gives it its enduring influence. Repeatedly applying "we can disagree without disrespect" cultivates a pattern of respect and constructive interaction. Over time, people learn that your engagement is thoughtful, measured, and principled. You establish an environment where dialogue is productive, boundaries are honored, and your presence commands attention without needing overt control. This phrase works across professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates clarity, self-trust, and emotional intelligence simultaneously. Through consistent use, it becomes a quiet instrument of authority, ensuring that disagreements are navigated with both dignity and respect, reinforcing your influence and presence in every interaction. When you say, "I'm confident in this choice," the room instantly senses steadiness and clarity. The phrase is simple, yet it carries profound authority because it communicates certainty without arrogance. It signals that you have carefully evaluated the situation, considered alternatives, and made a deliberate decision based on reason and insight. There is no defensiveness, no hedging, and no attempt to persuade, just calm assurance. People recognize confidence naturally, and when paired with composure, it becomes magnetic. By expressing conviction in your choices, you silently command attention and respect. Most individuals struggle to project confidence in their decisions. They hedge statements with qualifiers like "I think" or "maybe this is right," which subtly conveys doubt. Others may over-justify their choices, attempting to preempt questions or criticism. Both approaches weaken perceived authority because they indicate uncertainty or dependency on approval. By contrast, "I'm confident in this choice" is concise, deliberate, and self-assured. It communicates not just the decision itself, but the internal stability and clarity from which the decision originates. Authority is derived from the seamless alignment between thought, decision, and expression. Psychologically, humans respond to confidence and consistency. When a person expresses certainty calmly, it triggers trust and deference. Listeners unconsciously assess that the choice is grounded in competence and deliberate reasoning, rather than in chance or external pressure. Confidence signals reliability. People intuitively feel that your decisions are worth considering, because they emanate from careful evaluation rather than impulse. The phrase works as a subtle command of respect because it demonstrates self-trust and invites others to align without coercion. Delivery is key. Speak the phrase steadily, with a composed and calm tone. Avoid over-explaining or layering extra justification, which can dilute its impact. A brief pause after stating the words allows the weight of your confidence to settle, giving others a moment to register your certainty. Some may challenge your decision, but remaining calm reinforces the authority behind your statement. The power lies not in insisting others agree, but in projecting clarity, composure, and inner assurance. The statement establishes that your judgment is deliberate, and that your choices are anchored in thought, not whim. Repeatedly using "I'm confident in this choice" develops a pattern of perceived authority and respect. People come to expect stability in your decisions and clarity in your communication. Your presence becomes reassuring because others know that when you make a choice, it is intentional, reasoned, and firmly held. The phrase works in professional settings, personal interactions, and social dynamics alike because it communicates confidence without arrogance, authority without aggression, and decisiveness without inflexibility. Over time, consistently expressing this phrase subtly reinforces your influence, signals mental clarity, and positions you as someone whose judgments are both respected and trusted. When you say, "Let's address the real issue," the energy in the room immediately recalibrates. The phrase is calm, composed, and direct, signaling that you are focused on substance rather than distractions or superficial arguments. It communicates authority because it prioritizes clarity and solutions over noise and tangents. People unconsciously recognize that someone who can identify the core of a discussion and guide attention toward it is competent, in control, and thoughtful. The phrase sets a tone that is both assertive and respectful, subtly commanding focus without aggression or confrontation. Most individuals struggle with conversations because they get sidetracked by secondary concerns, emotions, or miscommunication. They may debate minor points endlessly, avoid the heart of the matter, or allow conflicts to become circular and unproductive. By contrast, "Let's address the real issue" cuts through the clutter. It signals that your attention is deliberate and that your engagement is purposeful. Authority arises not from dominance but from mental clarity. You are someone who discerns priorities and guides interactions with precision, creating respect through competence rather than force. Psychologically, humans respond to guidance that reduces ambiguity. When someone identifies the core problem, it provides direction and relief from confusion. By stating, "Let's address the real issue," you reduce cognitive friction in the interaction. People instinctively sense that your perspective is grounded, that you are capable of separating noise from substance, and that you will not allow the conversation to drift into unproductive territory. The phrase communicates both competence and confidence, signaling that your judgment is deliberate and trustworthy. Delivery is crucial. Speak the phrase with calm authority, avoiding any trace of frustration or condescension. Do not over-explain or preface it with apologies. The clarity of the statement itself is enough. Pause briefly afterward to allow the weight of your words to settle, giving others a moment to redirect their attention. Silence reinforces the authority of the phrase, emphasizing that your focus is intentional and that the conversation will proceed under your guidance. Some may resist or attempt to sidestep the topic, but maintaining composure ensures the statement retains its subtle power. Repeatedly using "let's address the real issue" establishes a pattern of respect and productivity over time. People come to recognize that your presence in discussions is stabilizing, purposeful, and grounded. Your guidance is trusted, not because it is imposed, but because it is consistent and effective. This phrase works across professional, personal, and social contexts because it communicates clarity, focus, and thoughtful authority. By consistently steering conversations towards substance, you cultivate a presence that commands attention, promotes respect, and ensures that interactions remain meaningful and results-oriented. When you say, "I don't need to justify this," the room instantly notices a shift in energy. The phrase is firm, calm, and resolute, projecting authority without aggression. It communicates that your decisions, choices, or actions are grounded in reason, principle, or experience, and that they do not require external validation. Unlike over-explaining, apologizing, or defending yourself unnecessarily, this statement asserts independence of thought and demonstrates self-confidence. People unconsciously recognize that someone who can uphold their decisions without justification commands respect, because authority rooted in clarity and composure is inherently magnetic. Most individuals undermine their own credibility by constantly explaining or defending their actions. They feel the need to provide context, rationale, or justification to appease others, often at the cost of authority. This habit signals insecurity and dependence on external approval, reducing respect in both professional and personal interactions. By contrast, "I don't need to justify this" communicates that your decisions are deliberate, informed, and self-sufficient. Authority emerges not from force or confrontation, but from the quiet assurance that your judgment is grounded and your position is intentional. Psychologically, humans respond to confidence and decisiveness. When someone communicates a choice without the need for validation, it signals that their reasoning is sound and self-contained. Others recognize that your actions are guided by principle, not impulse or pressure, and they adjust their perception of your credibility accordingly. The statement also reduces unnecessary negotiation or debate. It sets an implicit boundary that your choices are respected, not up for discussion. This creates a sense of stability and predictability, which is naturally compelling in social and professional interactions. Delivery is crucial. Speak the phrase with calm, steady authority. Avoid apologetic tones, qualifiers, or unnecessary explanation, which dilute its impact. A brief pause after the statement allows the weight of your confidence to settle, giving listeners the opportunity to recalibrate their assumptions. Silence reinforces authority by letting the statement exist independently, unchallenged, and uncompromised. Some may probe or test your stance, but maintaining composure ensures that the power of the phrase remains intact. Authority is established not through confrontation, but through disciplined self-assurance. Repeatedly using, "I don't need to justify this," cultivates a pattern of respect and self-possession. People begin to understand that your decisions are intentional, and your judgment reliable. You establish a presence that is calm, grounded, and unshakable, commanding acknowledgement without coercion. The phrase works in professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates confidence without arrogance, authority without aggression, and decisiveness without defensiveness. Over time, it becomes a signature of your presence, a quiet but undeniable command that your thoughts, choices, and principles are valid on their own, earning respect naturally in every interaction. When you say, "That's outside my responsibility," the atmosphere subtly shifts. The phrase is firm, clear, and measured, establishing boundaries without hostility or defensiveness. It communicates authority because it signals awareness of your role, limits, and priorities, while subtly guiding others to recalibrate their expectations. Unlike excuses or reactive pushback, this phrase asserts control over your engagement, making it clear that you are responsible, deliberate, and intentional about where you invest your energy. People instinctively recognize and respect such clarity because it signals competence and self-possession. Many individuals struggle to maintain authority in conversations or work environments because they fail to establish limits. They overcommit, absorb responsibilities that are not theirs, or try to please everyone. This often leads to fatigue, frustration, and erosion of respect, as others unconsciously see them as pliable or uncertain. By contrast, "That's outside my responsibility" sets a boundary decisively and professionally. It communicates that your focus is intentional, your contributions are measured, and your time is valuable. Authority here comes from clarity, not from confrontation. You demonstrate that your energy and attention are allocated wisely and thoughtfully. Psychologically, humans respond to boundaries because they create predictability and structure. When someone states clearly what falls within and outside their responsibility, it reduces ambiguity, aligns expectations, and fosters trust. The phrase communicates self-awareness and prioritization. Others intuitively understand that you are someone who knows your domain, respects your own limits, and does not act impulsively or reactively. This subtle command of respect is particularly effective in professional settings, team collaborations, or any context where roles and responsibilities matter. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase with calm, steady authority, avoiding defensiveness or hesitation. Do not over-explain or offer unnecessary justification, as this weakens its impact. A brief pause after saying the words allows them to resonate and provides space for others to adjust their expectations. Silence amplifies the authority of the phrase, giving it weight and clarity. Some may test the boundary, but maintaining composure ensures that your authority remains intact. The power of this phrase is in its subtlety. It communicates control, responsibility, and discernment without aggression. Repeatedly using "that's outside my responsibility" cultivates respect and trust over time. People learn that your engagement is intentional and focused, and they adjust their expectations accordingly. The phrase works across professional, personal, and social contexts because it balances firmness with neutrality. It asserts boundaries without arrogance, communicates clarity without confrontation, and reinforces authority without coercion. Over time, this phrase becomes a quiet but powerful tool, establishing you as someone who commands respect not by force but through discernment, intentionality, and the confident management of your responsibilities. When you say, "I expect mutual respect," the energy in the room immediately shifts. The phrase is calm, firm, and uncompromising, yet it is not confrontational. It communicates that the conversation, interaction, or relationship must operate within a framework of civility and acknowledgement. By stating this clearly, you establish a standard for behavior and subtly assert authority. People instinctively recognize that someone who sets expectations for respect demonstrates self-awareness, confidence, and the ability to manage interactions effectively. The phrase is powerful because it positions you as both principled and composed, demanding recognition without raising your voice. Many individuals struggle to assert this type of authority because they hesitate to enforce standards or fear conflict. They allow dismissive, rude, or manipulative behavior to go unchecked, often rationalizing it to avoid discomfort. The result is diminished credibility and reduced influence. By contrast, I expect mutual respect sets a clear boundary while maintaining calm authority. It communicates that you value yourself and your interactions, and that you will not accept behavior that undermines integrity or composure. The authority comes not from aggression, but from the clarity and consistency of your standards. Psychologically, humans respond to boundaries and clarity. When someone asserts the expectation of respect, it reduces ambiguity in the interaction and establishes a predictable framework. Others understand that civility is a prerequisite for meaningful engagement and are more likely to adjust their behavior accordingly. The phrase also signals self-trust. You are confident in your value and presence, and you do not need to tolerate disrespect to maintain influence. This combination of confidence and boundary setting naturally commands respect, as people recognize the balance between firmness and composure. Delivery is crucial. Speak the phrase steadily and calmly, without hesitation or apology. Avoid qualifiers like "I hope" or "I think," which weaken the impact. A brief pause afterward allows the weight of your words to settle, giving others the chance to recalibrate their behavior. Silence reinforces the authority embedded in the phrase, emphasizing that your expectation is non-negotiable, yet expressed without hostility. Some may initially resist, but maintaining composure and consistency strengthens the effectiveness of the statement. Authority in this context arises from the balance of principle, clarity, and emotional self-control. Repeatedly using "I expect mutual respect" establishes a pattern of credible, principled presence over time. People come to recognize that your interactions are grounded in standards, and that your engagement is deliberate and thoughtful. This phrase works across professional, personal, and social contexts, because it communicates firmness without arrogance, authority without aggression, and self-assurance without confrontation. Through consistent application, it becomes a quiet but powerful tool for commanding respect, setting boundaries, and shaping interactions in a way that reinforces your credibility and influence naturally. When you say, "Let's reset the tone," the dynamics of any interaction immediately shift. The phrase is calm, composed, and constructive, signaling authority without confrontation. It communicates that the conversation or situation has veered off course, perhaps becoming tense, unproductive, or emotionally charged, and that you are taking the lead to re-establish clarity, composure, and focus. Unlike criticism or reactive statements, this phrase does not attack. It redirects, it subtly asserts leadership, and signals to others that you are attentive, grounded, and committed to productive dialogue. People unconsciously recognize this type of control, and naturally respond with alignment and respect. Many individuals struggle to maintain composure during conversations, especially when emotions run high. They may become reactive, defensive, or caught up in conflict, which diminishes both clarity and authority. By contrast, "Let's reset the tone" establishes a clear framework for recalibration. It demonstrates that you are aware of the environment, capable of guiding it, and unwilling to allow negativity or miscommunication to dominate. Authority emerges from the quiet control and foresight this phrase conveys, showing that you are someone who manages both words and energy effectively. Psychologically, humans respond strongly to cues that regulate emotional and social dynamics. Resetting the tone signals emotional intelligence, self-possession, and deliberate leadership. People notice that you are not reactive or defensive. You are proactive, shaping the conversation in a constructive direction. This phrase communicates both competence and composure. It creates space for thoughtful engagement, discourages unnecessary conflict, and ensures interactions remain purposeful. The authority is subtle yet undeniable because it arises from your ability to influence the emotional climate without force or aggression. Delivery is critical. Speak the phrase with calm, steady confidence, avoiding any hint of frustration or blame. Pause briefly afterward to let it resonate, allowing others to absorb the shift in energy and adjust accordingly. Silence reinforces authority, giving your words weight and demonstrating that you are fully in control of both the content and tone of the interaction. Some may initially resist or test the shift, but maintaining composure ensures that your leadership remains intact. The power of the phrase lies in its ability to redirect without confrontation, establishing respect through presence and emotional clarity. Repeatedly using "let's reset the tone" cultivates a pattern of influence and respect over time. People come to recognize that you can navigate tense situations calmly, guide interactions effectively, and maintain composure under pressure. This phrase works across professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates subtle authority, emotional intelligence, and thoughtful leadership. Through consistent application, it becomes a quiet yet potent tool for commanding respect, redirecting energy, and ensuring that conversations and collaborations remain constructive, focused, and aligned with meaningful outcomes. When you say, "I'm open to feedback, not control," the atmosphere of any interaction subtly changes. The phrase is calm, assertive, and grounded, signaling that you are receptive to input while maintaining authority over your own decisions and boundaries. It communicates that collaboration is welcome, but manipulation or overreach will not be tolerated. Unlike defensive or reactive statements, this phrase clearly distinguishes between constructive engagement and attempts to dominate. People unconsciously recognize this balance between openness and self-possession, and it naturally commands respect. Many individuals struggle to assert authority in collaborative settings because they fear discouraging contributions or upsetting others. They may acquiesce to undue influence or overcompensate by over-explaining. The result is often diminished credibility and blurred boundaries. By contrast, "I'm open to feedback, not control," establishes a firm yet flexible standard. It communicates that you value perspectives without compromising your autonomy, demonstrating both emotional intelligence and self-confidence. Authority emerges from this clarity and balance, signaling that your participation is intentional and grounded in self-trust. Psychologically, humans respond to clear boundaries combined with openness. By distinguishing feedback from control, you create an environment where dialogue is productive, opinions are welcomed, and respect is required. The phrase conveys that you are discerning, capable of integrating input thoughtfully, and unwilling to surrender your decision-making power. Others intuitively understand that collaboration with you requires awareness, consideration, and respect, which enhances both your credibility and influence. This duality, openness paired with firm boundaries, subtly commands acknowledgement and compliance without aggression. Delivery is crucial. Speak the phrase steadily, calmly, and with assurance. Avoid defensive tones or qualifiers such as "I hope" or "maybe," which weaken its impact. A brief pause after the statement allows listeners to process its meaning and recalibrate their approach. Silence reinforces authority by emphasizing that your boundary is deliberate and non-negotiable, even as you remain receptive to constructive input. Some may attempt to push limits or test the statement, but maintaining composure ensures the phrase retains its power. Authority here is rooted in discernment, confidence, and the subtle management of influence. Repeatedly using "I'm open to feedback, not control," cultivates a pattern of credibility, respect, and influence over time. People come to understand that your engagement is thoughtful, intentional, and principled. The phrase works across professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates receptiveness without submission, authority without aggression, and composure without rigidity. Over time, it becomes a quiet yet potent tool for commanding respect, a clear marker that your autonomy is intact, your judgment is reliable, and collaboration with you occurs on terms of mutual recognition and thoughtful boundaries. When you say, "I won't rush a serious decision," the room immediately senses patience, thoughtfulness, and authority. The phrase communicates that you take responsibility seriously, that your choices are deliberate, and that you prioritize careful consideration over impulsive action. It establishes respect because it signals self-control and a commitment to process rather than convenience or external pressure. People naturally recognize that someone who can hold their ground, resist haste, and evaluate consequences demonstrates maturity, clarity, and quiet authority. Unlike reactive statements or hurried justifications, this phrase exudes composure and deliberate presence. Many individuals compromise their authority by yielding to pressure or making decisions too quickly. They may justify haste with convenience or a desire to please, unintentionally undermining their credibility. By contrast, "I won't rush a serious decision" sets a clear standard for both your behavior and others' expectations. It communicates that you value the integrity of your judgment and the weight of your responsibilities. Authority emerges not from force or loud assertion, but from the calm, deliberate control this phrase embodies. It signals that your engagement is thoughtful and principled, earning respect naturally. Psychologically, humans respond to restraint and deliberate action. When someone takes the time to evaluate important matters, it signals competence and confidence. The phrase communicates that you are not reactive or impulsive, that you weigh consequences, and that your decisions are informed rather than hurried. Others recognize the implicit expectation: important decisions require respect, attention, and patience. This dynamic subtly commands respect because it positions you as someone whose choices carry deliberate weight and credibility, making your presence and judgment influential by virtue of their thoughtfulness. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase calmly, steadily, and without apology. Avoid hedging or justifying your decision-making process, as this diminishes the impact. A brief pause afterward allows the words to resonate, reinforcing your commitment to thoughtful action. Silence strengthens authority, giving the phrase weight and emphasizing the seriousness with which you approach responsibility. Some may attempt to pressure you or accelerate the process, but maintaining composure ensures that the authority of your statement remains intact. The power of this phrase lies in its quiet, principled stance. It asserts control over your choices without defensiveness or hostility. Repeatedly using "I won't rush a serious decision" establishes a pattern of credibility and respect over time. People recognize that your actions are deliberate, that your judgments are considered, and that your presence is grounded in thoughtfulness and responsibility. This phrase works across professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates authority without aggression, composure without rigidity, and prudence without indecision. Over time, it becomes a subtle but powerful tool for commanding respect, reinforcing the perception that your decisions are reliable, deliberate, and worthy of consideration. When you say, "That behavior isn't acceptable," the energy in the room immediately shifts. The phrase is firm, calm, and unequivocal, establishing a clear boundary without hostility. It communicates authority because it defines standards of conduct and signals that you will not tolerate actions that undermine respect, collaboration, or integrity. Unlike emotional outbursts or passive complaints, this statement sets a principled expectation, showing that you are observant, deliberate, and confident in upholding boundaries. People recognize authority in those who can articulate limits clearly and consistently. Many individuals struggle to enforce boundaries effectively. They may hesitate to call out unacceptable behavior for fear of conflict or appearing confrontational. This often leads to a subtle erosion of respect, as others perceive uncertainty or permissiveness. By contrast, "That behavior isn't acceptable" communicates clarity, control, and self-assurance. It defines what is permitted in the interaction and demonstrates that you are attentive to standards and consequences. Authority arises not from aggression, but from the consistent, composed enforcement of boundaries. Psychologically, humans respond strongly to clear limits. When behavior crosses a defined threshold, a calm but firm acknowledgement commands attention and recalibrates the dynamic. By stating that certain conduct is unacceptable, you create a framework for accountability, reducing confusion and uncertainty in interactions. The phrase conveys that you value respect and integrity, that you are aware of social and ethical boundaries, and that you will act to maintain them. Others instinctively recognize that your expectations are grounded, deliberate, and non-negotiable, which reinforces your credibility and influence. Delivery is critical. Speak the phrase steadily, without raised voices or aggressive gestures. Avoid apologetic qualifiers such as "I'm sorry" or "maybe," which weaken its authority. A brief pause afterward allows the words to settle, giving others space to adjust their behavior and recognize the boundary. Silence enhances its impact, letting the authority of the statement exist independently without the need for further justification. Some may initially challenge or test your limits, but maintaining composure ensures the power of the phrase remains intact. Authority here comes from calm assertiveness, clarity of standards, and self-possession. Repeatedly using "that behavior isn't acceptable" cultivates a pattern of respect and accountability over time. People learn that your presence is principled, observant, and intentional. The phrase works across professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates firmness without hostility, authority without aggression, and consistency without rigidity. Over time, it becomes a quiet yet powerful tool for commanding respect, shaping interactions, and ensuring that your boundaries are recognized and upheld consistently. Your credibility and influence grow as a direct result of your ability to enforce expectations with calm authority. When you say, "I know where I stand," the room instantly registers confidence and clarity. The phrase is calm, grounded, and deliberate, conveying that your position, principles, and values are clearly defined. It communicates authority without aggression because it signals self-awareness and internal alignment. People instinctively respect those who exhibit certainty in their stance, not because of dominance or coercion, but because of the quiet confidence and stability that accompanies a well-defined sense of self. Unlike defensive statements or reactive claims, this phrase projects composure and decisiveness. Many individuals struggle to assert themselves effectively because they waver under pressure or attempt to appease others. They may hedge statements, over-explain, or defer to external opinions, signaling uncertainty or lack of conviction. By contrast, "I know where I stand" conveys internal clarity and independence. It establishes your boundaries, values, and perspective as non-negotiable, yet expressed without hostility. Authority emerges naturally from this self-possession. Others recognize that your judgments are rooted in thoughtful consideration and personal integrity rather than impulse or social pressure. Psychologically, humans respond to consistency and clarity. When someone articulates their stance with calm assurance, it reduces ambiguity and fosters trust. People perceive that your position is deliberate, well-considered, and stable, which encourages alignment and respect. This phrase subtly communicates that your choices and boundaries are grounded in principle rather than external influence, establishing a natural hierarchy of credibility. Authority here is not about overpowering others, but about demonstrating competence, self-awareness, and inner stability. Delivery is critical. Speak the phrase steadily, without hesitation, qualifiers, or defensive tones. Avoid softening it with words like "I think" or "maybe," which dilute its impact. A brief pause afterward allows the statement to resonate and gives others space to acknowledge your certainty. Silence reinforces the authority embedded in the phrase, emphasizing that your stance is deliberate and unwavering. Some may test your conviction or challenge your position, but maintaining composure ensures the phrase retains its subtle yet powerful effect. The strength of the statement lies in its quiet, confident clarity, which commands recognition without confrontation. Repeatedly using "I know where I stand" cultivates a pattern of respect and credibility over time. People come to understand that your perspective is consistent, deliberate, and principled, and they naturally adjust their expectations and interactions accordingly. This phrase works across professional, personal, and social contexts because it communicates authority without arrogance, self-assurance without rigidity, and confidence without aggression. Over time, it becomes a subtle but potent tool for commanding respect, reinforcing boundaries, and asserting your presence through the quiet strength of self-awareness and deliberate alignment. When you say "this discussion ends here," the room immediately senses finality and control. The phrase is calm, decisive, and composed, communicating authority without aggression. It signals that you have considered the conversation, evaluated its relevance, and determined that further debate or negotiation is unnecessary. People instinctively recognize that someone who can close a discussion with clarity and composure commands respect. Unlike abrupt or reactive statements that may provoke conflict, this phrase establishes boundaries while maintaining professionalism and composure. Many individuals struggle to assert control over discussions because they fear appearing dismissive or rude. They may continue debating unnecessarily, allow tangents to take over, or attempt to appease everyone, which often erodes their authority and presence. By contrast, "this discussion ends here" clearly sets a limit, demonstrating that you are thoughtful, intentional, and capable of managing both the content and flow of interactions. Authority emerges from your ability to maintain composure while establishing boundaries, showing that you value your time, focus, and energy. Psychologically, humans respond to clear limits and decisive closure. Ending a discussion respectfully yet firmly reduces ambiguity and signals competence. The phrase communicates that you are not reactive or defensive, that you maintain control over your participation, and that your attention is allocated intentionally. Others recognize that your decisions about when to engage or disengage are deliberate, which reinforces credibility and respect. By establishing this boundary, you prevent unnecessary conflict, minimize tension, and cultivate an environment where interactions are meaningful and purposeful. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase calmly and steadily, without raising your voice or showing frustration. Avoid qualifiers like "I think" or "maybe," which weaken the finality of the statement. A brief pause afterward allows the words to resonate, emphasizing the authority behind your boundary. Silence further strengthens its impact, demonstrating that the statement is deliberate and non-negotiable. Some may initially resist or challenge your closure, but maintaining composure ensures that your authority is preserved. The power of this phrase lies in its clarity, decisiveness, and emotional equilibrium. Repeatedly using "this discussion ends here" cultivates a pattern of respect and control over time. People learn that your interactions are purposeful, that you know when to engage and when to set limits, and that your presence carries deliberate authority. This phrase works across professional, social, and personal contexts because it communicates firm boundaries without hostility, authority without aggression, and composure without rigidity. Over time, it becomes a subtle yet powerful tool for commanding respect, reinforcing your credibility, and managing interactions with clarity, decisiveness, and quiet authority. When you say, "I'm not comfortable proceeding that way," the room instantly recognizes calm authority and self-awareness. The phrase communicates boundaries, discernment, and personal responsibility without hostility or defensiveness. It signals that your engagement is deliberate, that your choices are guided by principle rather than pressure, and that your participation is conditional on alignment with your values or standards. People naturally respond to this type of clarity because it demonstrates internal alignment and personal accountability, which are markers of authority and respect. Many individuals struggle to assert themselves in situations where expectations conflict with their principles. They may acquiesce to pressure, compromise values, or react defensively, which can diminish credibility and erode self-respect. By contrast, stating, "I'm not comfortable proceeding that way," establishes clear boundaries while maintaining composure and professionalism. Authority emerges not from confrontation, but from the ability to articulate limits with confidence and calm. This phrase conveys that your involvement is thoughtful, intentional, and guided by internal standards rather than external influence. Psychologically, humans respond to honesty and clarity in communication. When someone clearly expresses discomfort with a proposed approach, it creates structure, reduces ambiguity, and signals integrity. Others recognize that your participation is predicated on reasoned consideration, not on yielding to pressure or following blindly. The phrase communicates both respect for yourself and the situation. It shows that you are not dismissive or reactionary, but principled, capable of discernment, and aware of the impact of your actions. This subtle authority fosters recognition and acknowledgement from those around you. Delivery is essential. Speak the phrase calmly and steadily, avoiding apologetic tones or qualifiers that dilute its effect. Do not over-explain or justify your position, as the authority lies in the clarity of the statement itself. A brief pause afterward allows your words to resonate, letting others adjust their expectations and approach. Silence reinforces authority by giving the statement presence without the need for additional justification. Some may test your limits or attempt to pressure you, but maintaining composure ensures that the power of the phrase remains intact. Its strength lies in the balance between firmness, clarity, and respectful self-possession. Repeatedly using, "I'm not comfortable proceeding that way," cultivates a consistent pattern of credibility and respect. People learn that your decisions and participation are deliberate, principled, and thoughtfully considered. The phrase works across professional, personal, and social contexts because it communicates authority without hostility, self-assurance without rigidity, and integrity without confrontation. Over time, it becomes a subtle but potent tool for commanding respect, establishing boundaries and maintaining influence by demonstrating that your engagement is always guided by intentionality, values, and calm self-possession. Throughout this script, we explored 25 phrases that do more than fill conversation. They create presence, authority, and lasting respect. Each phrase carries subtle power because it communicates clarity, composure, and intentionality. Whether asserting boundaries, expressing confidence, or redirecting discussions, the words you choose signal who you are, what you value, and how you engage with the world. People respond not merely to what is said, but to the certainty, calm, and alignment behind it. In every interaction, respect is cultivated when communication reflects thoughtfulness, principle, and self-possession. The phrases in this collection share a common thread. They balance authority with composure. You do not command respect through aggression, intimidation, or dominance. Instead, it arises naturally when your words are deliberate, your boundaries are clear, and your decisions are grounded in awareness. From stating, "I'm confident in this choice," to calmly ending a discussion with, "This discussion ends here," each expression demonstrates self-possession and clarity of mind. Authority is never imposed. It is recognized because others sense the internal alignment between thought, decision, and communication. Equally important is the consistent use of these phrases. Authority is reinforced through patterns of behavior, not isolated statements. People notice when you remain steadfast under pressure, maintain boundaries without hostility, and navigate conversations with composure. Each phrase serves as a building block in constructing a presence that is both approachable and firmly anchored. It creates an invisible framework in which others naturally adjust, recognizing your reliability, consistency, and integrity. The result is an environment of mutual respect, collaboration, and effective engagement. Ultimately, commanding respect is not about control. It is about intentionality. It is about understanding your principles, making deliberate choices, and communicating them with calm authority. These phrases equip you with practical tools to assert yourself without hostility, guide interactions without coercion, and maintain presence without compromise. They cultivate trust, clarity, and alignment, allowing you to navigate personal, social, and professional situations with confidence. By integrating these phrases into daily interactions, you create a life in which your words carry weight, your decisions are respected, and your presence naturally commands acknowledgement. Respect is a reflection of self-possession. When you know where you stand, when you establish boundaries, and when you communicate with calm confidence, others recognize your credibility and reliability. The mastery of these 25 phrases is not merely about speaking effectively, it is about becoming the person whose clarity, composure, and intentionality inspire acknowledgement and respect. In every conversation, every decision, and every interaction, the principles behind these phrases remain your guide, creating a life defined by presence, authority, and the quiet power of deliberate communication.